This is Car Guys New England, your YouTube channel for anything automotive.
Bad, cause it's bit bad. Smoke with the bad. Like tips at the front. Let's go. I'm fly like a pelican in my bed. I like in my way, hella quick. Like to get a up on the elephant cut. My trunk, yeah, it's in the front. Of course, it's in the back. It's a big. It's a real big difference. You just want a club. I just need them racks. You just want a party. I just want a rock.
This is Jay with Car Guys New England, and today we're going to be working on the Caprice again. Got a little bit more wiring to do, things like that. So let's get started on this, shall we? So one of the first things that I'm going to do, I made some changes to the rack. So I'm going to have my assistant open up these solenoid boxes, and we're going to relocate the solenoids. So I am replacing them with nice Accumax solenoids. Okay, so we need to get all 6 of these out, buddy. So as you've noticed, I've welded in another bar here for solenoids. You can see I got solenoids since I shifted the pumps around. These solenoids are almost impossible to get at. I won't be able to get at them with the batteries in the car. So I want to make sure that obviously it's easy to change out the solenoids. So what I'm going to do is mark all the solenoids for what bank they are, and then at that point I can start putting the solenoids in, and I'll slowly get this wired up. Alright, so I marked my solenoids front left, and then I have rear left, so those are all going to go on this bar here. Alright, so the solenoids are mounted in. Alright, so I got a 96 volt solenoids for the front, and then these 4 banks of 3 are our individual corners. That's 48 volts for each of those. So I got the solenoids relocated, and it's looking pretty good. I still got to remove the solenoids along the back there, but that's not a big deal. Alright, so we're back at it again on the Caprice, and I'm going to put in some fuel system cleaner, since in my last video I talked about how the carburetor felt like it was a little gummed up. So I'm going to see if this can get me by without having to rebuild the carburetor right now, but let's dump this in, and then we'll get into what we need to get into here. All right, and here we go. Alright, so using my 1/2-inch wrench, I am going to loosen up all these motor connections and undo the wires going to the solenoids, because these are too small. So it's time to remove those, and we're going to upgrade. All of our motor wires have been undone, and now it's time to remove these solenoids that, since I relocated the pumps, are just in a bad spot. So I'm going to undo those and get those out of here. Alright, front right appears to be red. Alright, so these solenoids are out, both banks. So we're good there. I'm just going to throw these out. I got plenty of Accumax ones laying around. Alright, so the solenoids in the back are out. I don't like these particular spade lugs. Actually, I'm going to go with the round lugs. So I'm going to cut those off and just clean that up. Get some slack out of the wires here. And you know, we'll start hooking up all the wires to the solenoids. So just to make things a lot easier for me to remember, and in case anything gets unhooked. So you got the red wire going to that. So I already got it marked front right. I'm going to put an R on it for for the color of the wire. And I really don't give a fuck how this looks, because this car is not a show car anymore. So all of these are marked blue, and this set is black. So I'm going to try to write BLK. 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 All right, so we're going to make the secondary wires for top of the solenoid. So I'm using this 14 gauge stranded wire, and I'm going to end up putting some nice loops on them and crimping those on. So we'll get started. So our wires are cut, and there's 2 per bank of 3. Now I'm going to strip the ends on these wires and crimp on the connectors. Here's what I like to use to strip the wires. A nice pair of these strippers made by Ideal Industries, and that makes sure that you don't strip away any of the actual conductor inside. So the wires have been stripped, and they're all this equal amount of stripping. So now I'm going to use my trusty crimpers to put on the loops. All right, so we got our ends on the wires. So now to the next step. And here's what they'll look like all coiled up. And then you can just pull them to length when you put them on the solenoid. So that's what those look like. And let's put these on the solenoids in the car. So I got the wires that I made in. I haven't connected it to these ones yet because I need to get some slack out of these lines so I can put a loop connector on those instead of these stupid spades, because these can just come off. But once I do that, then obviously I'll connect the last secondary wire and pull that over and make my final connections on the secondary wiring. Then at that point, all the secondary wiring is done on the car, and then I'm going to start making the actual battery cables. All right, Saturday, and gonna finish up the secondary wiring on the solenoid so I can start making the battery cables. So I'm gonna make my way to the toolbox and get the tools that I need to do this. All right, my terminal kit, my Klein crimpers, and my strippers, and that will allow me to finish up the secondary wiring. Also, I need a pair of wire snips. Okay, got my wire cutters, and now I'm just going to make my way over to the back of the Caprice. Alright, so I got a little bit more slack out of these wires, which I'm going to reroute underneath and up, and then these wires also got a little bit more slack in them as well for these solenoids, so now I can make the connections for those bad boys. But let's start getting everything together and nice and neat. Obviously I'm going to redo the spades on those and put ring terminals on just for a better connection. Alright, so I'm just going to snip that off, strip it, and crimp on the new connector for the black wire. So now we have that crimped on, and I'm just going to make the connection on the solenoid and then drag over the that wire, and this one's all set. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the red wire, the blue wire, and the other green wire. Get those hooked up, and then all the secondary wiring is complete. And now all of our solenoids are wired on the secondary side. So there's the hop switch, and there's the 48 volt solenoid. So this looks good. Time to start making my my loops For connecting the solenoids, I do not like using those stupid connectors that a lot of people use. Just found that they're a pain in the ass to take apart, they're a pain in the ass to remove the solenoid. So I want to make everything real quick and easy to work on, so that's why this looks like this. So as you can see on the old setup, I have those, or I should say these battery cables. Now, battery cables are pretty stiff, they're not very flexible. These ones just happen to be too thin for the voltage that I'm going to be running. So I'm going to switch over to welding cable, and there's a huge difference with welding cable. Number one, welding cable has a lot more weight to it. Number two, welding cable is also a lot more flexible. So let me show you guys that. All right, so we're going to need two things out of here. A pair of cutters for cutting the battery cable. And also these crimpers, which you just set them to the correct size, and that will crimp on the battery lugs onto the wires. So I'm going to bring that with me as well. So here's 100 feet of double-aught welding cable, and as you can see, it's a lot more flexible than normal battery cable. So we can easily, take that out. Now I have two different types of lugs. Obviously I want to use the smaller hold lug for all my solenoids and two motors. So those will all have these connectors versus these, which would just be sloppy and stupid. But I'm going to use those on battery cables. So they do have a purpose, but most of the stuff that I'm going to be making will have these copper lugs. All right, so we've stripped away the insulation and got the lug on as far as I can. I'm going to try to get it on a little bit further, and then I'm going to crimp it with the special tool. All right, so I got that on as far as I can. You'll notice that one little conductor sticking out of that, not a big deal. I'm actually going to put over some shrink wrap on this once I crimp this. But I got it on as far as I can. All right, so I've cut all my solenoid wires, and I'm just going to strip them back very carefully using these cutters, just turning it gently along there, and then I'll pull the insulation off. So I'm going to get that done, and then we'll start getting the lugs on and crimping them all on. And again, it's stripped, and just going to put the connector on. I have crimped all of the solenoid connectors. I am going to squish them a little bit more in the vise, just so they're really tight, and then I'll put some shrink wrap or some electrical tape over the ends, depending on what I have on hand, so I'll take a look at that. All right, so those are all set. Unfortunately, I don't have shrink wrap that fits it, so I am going to use electrical tape. I really don't care. So anyways, I'll get these wrapped up, and then we can get these in the car. There it is, all wrapped, so it doesn't short out against anything like the rack or anything like that. So there we go. All right, all my solenoid wires are ready to get bolted into the car. So far I got two of the wires on for one of the solenoid banks. I'm going to get the rest finished up, but this is starting to feel really good. I enjoy working on this stuff, and I take pride in the fact that I work on it on my own. I don't send shit out to shops. In the beginning I used to, but as I've learned a lot, I just take pride in doing it myself and helping out club members. All right, so as you can see, I have most of the wires in place. I just got one more, this one, to add to that, and then connect my 48 volt solenoids together. I don't know how I managed to make the wrong amount, but not a big deal. I'll just get back at it, put those together, and then I can start wiring the actual pumps to the solenoids with the double-aught wire. All right, so all the solenoids are wired. I got the 48 volts going to those two banks. I need to make a wire to go from there to 48 volt position. I already have one wire for 96 volts on the 96 volt post, and then I need to make a wire to go from there to the battery for 96 volts. So I got two more wires to run. So I ended up making more cables, and this welding cable is not light stuff, but this is legal weight in hopping, and this is about 15 pounds of weight, just these cables alone, not counting what I've already put in the car. As I mentioned earlier, these solenoids here and over here are all 48 volts. So I already have the cable for 48 volts for the battery there. That covers those solenoids, but I need to run the cable from here over to the 48 volt terminal on the battery, and then also I need to run a wire from there over to where our 96 volt terminal is. So I'm going to get those in, and then we'll continue wiring the setup. There we go. All the solenoids are wired, so we're double switched. We're good to go. I got my cables for 48 volts. Got my cables for 96. So we are good to go, folks. That was absolutely brutal work. It is so hot in the garage. It's so hot today. It's disgusting. But I got all the primary wiring done for the solenoids, and next steps, I can put the batteries in, I can start priming the setup and all that wonderful stuff that goes along with that. So if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to give the video a like. If you have questions or comments, be sure to comment down below. This is Jay with Car Guys New England. Until next time, take care.